Well, good afternoon, everybody. And it is another one of those wealthy Wednesdays. So wealthy has so many meanings to it. And for me, wealthy is never about the money because I always believe the money will come. But wealth is about you and what you do to encourage your own health and your happiness within yourself. Because when you're happy, everything else comes to you. And I don't know if you agree with that, but that is my analogy of it. Nicole, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. When you can talk about money or wealth, two different things,
Right.
two very big different things. And to live your life with purpose and gratitude and with surrender, that is wealthy. That is abundance. That's what starts the ball rolling for everything. So I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's, when you have that type of an attitude in life, more things are given to you. And it all starts like how I start my day is with gratitude. The moment that I can put my feet down on the floor or that I just woken up and I can see another day. And we never can take those things into, just accept those things and not really look at them as it is totally a gift.
It,
And
it is.
right.
Yeah. Oh, and I was thinking when I woke up this morning, it's funny because the word miracle came to me. The word miracle. I'm like, okay, what, when I hear something, when I wake up with that word like on my lips, in my mind, in my field, I'm like, what are we supposed to be expressing? And basically that what my guides were telling me is, why does a miracle have to be someone in a hospital that lives through something where they're supposed to die? A miracle can be something as your first breath in the morning. A miracle could be a new animal being born, a new baby being born. There's just so many explanations for miracle. So it's interesting that you opened it that way, because that was what I woke up to this morning. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I thought, maybe that's what we need to talk about, is there's so many miracles.
Well, and it goes in with our first guest today because you know what? I believe, and because I've had so many times in my life where I've been knocked down, and I mean, it's not, I've been knocked down emotionally, I've been knocked down physically, I've been, my life has been shattered in so many different times throughout my life, and I just keep on going. And I look at that as a miracle. I look at what I was going to say is I had a conversation earlier today with somebody who was saying to me that they were just going to be celebrating their 65th birthday and or 66th, and it was a hard birthday. And I believe that we are so lucky each year or each day that we get to live and see the next day happening. So that's what a miracle really is. It's the matter
Absolutely.
that we have been given our health. And even if some people aren't given their health, we have a choice of being happy or not happy. We have a choice of being grateful or not grateful. So I start today with being grateful, and I'm so grateful for Nicole to be here and for our guest. So today, and then we'll really get into it big time. So Nicole, drum roll, please.
Well, we have a pretty special guest today. This lady has 35 years. She knows what she's talking about in the health and fitness industry. She's got 15 years in the healing industry. She is a cosmic energy reader and a medical astrologer. She's also an author. But listen to this statistic. She has helped 20,000 women gain their confidence and embrace their soul calling. And I can't think of anything more important to do to lead someone back to their essence, which is their soul. So, with that, let's welcome the Reverend Joanne Angel Barry Colon. And I hope I said that right. If I didn't, please correct me.
Close enough. The last name is Barry Colon, but
Barry
that's okay. Like
Colon.
cologne
Okay.
that we put on our bodies, yes, except it's spelled Colon.
Okay, gotcha. I tried.
You did. E for effort, yes.
Okay.
Well, welcome, Joanne. And as we were talking today, what you do is to me one of the most important virtues in our lives of learning to love ourselves, but to look after ourselves. Because when we don't look after this temple that holds us in, Oh, I have just seen that I am, for some reason, I'm echoing. If we don't allow to use our temple and look after it with love and respect, then we don't have much, do we?
No, we don't. You know, as you were both saying about miracles and wealth, not in reference to money, the new mantra is your health is your wealth, and without health, you really do not have anything.
No.
Now that is so true. And as we look around, I still see, even with that saying, I still see so many people truly abusing their body, whether it be by drink or by processed food, by eating all the time, not just when you're hungry or your body calls for it, or not listening to what their body needs to keep them healthy. How do you incorporate that into what you're teaching, your trainings, your thought process?
Well, I love the question, and it's so perfectly aligned with my whole new mission in reference to what it is I'm being called to really get in front of a large audience and share this information. As you mentioned, where people are really not taking care of their bodies, they're either over drinking, overeating, eating things that may not serve their body. Understanding, and I know that Nicole is really going to get this, and I'm sure Glenda is going to get it as well. We have to understand that before many of us have evolved into this 4D, 5D energy that we're all moving into consciously or unconsciously, we've all lived in a 3D energy. And we've been told for many years, such as 100 years, that there are certain things that we can and cannot do. You know, what is good food, what is bad food. And in theory, when we really think about it, it's the habits, it's the programming, it's the philosophies that we have learned over the last hundreds of years to think that, okay, this particular food is bad for me, so I shouldn't have it. But when we move into that space of letting go of the words bad and good and move into that space of how will this particular food serve me? So if I choose to want to have a bowl of cereal, and I know that might not seem like the worst thing in the world, but it's in a box, and whatever the nutrients level label says it is, and by me choosing to have that bowl of cereal, what I'm doing is I'm feeding my inner child's desire for that bowl of cereal. So what I do, my approach, and what I do with my clients, and I ask my clients to do the same, is rather than focusing on, well, this is bad for me and I shouldn't have it, I let go of the shouldn'ts and I allow myself to say, evaluate, why is it I want the bowl of cereal? What is it doing for me? It's going to honor my inner child's desire. That's a big thing for us because most of us have forgotten or may not even know that we have an inner child. And our inner child, for some of us, might have been neglected as a child. So it's our job, our responsibility as adults that we are, to honor that inner child, to support the inner child's wishes. And to do that is to recognize that there is really no food that is actually bad for us. When we get to that mindset of like, why am I choosing this food? And it doesn't matter what's in that food. And this is what I do on a regular, whatever it is I'm going to eat, I energize that food. And I literally will have a conversation with that food before I decide to eat it in regards to what am I doing with these nutrients? Doesn't matter what's in it. How are the nutrients going to play a role in my body? How's the fat going to play? How's the protein going to play? How's the sugar going to play? How's the salt going to play? How's it all? How's the carbohydrates going to play in my body? It's not about bad or good. It's about I'm going to now give each nutrient a role to do for why I'm choosing to eat whatever it is, such as the bowl of cereal. And then I honor my inner child when I do that. And at that point, by honoring the inner child, my inner child no longer feels neglected or not heard. And therefore, the rest of my day, I'm going to then balance out the fueling So now I'm going to fuel my body with high nutritious food because I've allowed myself the feeding and now I fuel it. So giving myself permission to embrace bad or good, because as we know, we move out of that 3D energy. And I think this is a process that we're all still learning is 3D. What is 3D energy? 3D is the ego saying, well, this is bad for us. This is good for us. This is healthier. This is not healthier. And in reality, if we really think back to over 100 years ago, now I have not been on the earth for over 100 years, and I'm sure the two of you have not neither. But we'll take it back to, let's say, the last 70 years. The foods that we're eating now and the foods we ate then, there's a very different level of ingredients in the food, which then, again, it brings us back to that. Let's energize what we're going to eat, not look at it in regards to this is bad for me, this is good for me. We're going to have, I call it desires, 3D call it cravings. We're going to have those cravings / desires. And if we allow ourselves to do that, where we feed into it, it gives us the permission and it takes away the guilt and the shame and the judgment to what it is we are eating. Now, with that approach, I set several weeks back, very quietly, connecting with my spirit guides, and I very specifically heard spiritual contracts with your body weight. And I said, and I'm like, spiritual contracts with your body weight. And I'm like, oh, so we have a spiritual contract, just like we do with everything else. The three of us have a contract right now in sharing this insight. And the same that we do with our body weight. Now, before I go further into that, I know that, Nicole, you had asked that specific question. Did I answer that question that you wanted?
You did, except I'm curious about something. When, just for instance, when you talk about cereal, we know that's one of the worst things we can eat. There's dyes in it. Some of our cereals are banned in foreign countries. There's generally, because of the sugar, let's just say there's no nutrition in cereal. So yes. How do you become cohesive with feeding the inner child something that literally has no nutrition versus maybe talking to that inner child, reasoning with her and like giving her alternatives that are healthy and do fuel the body in a way that there's no poison in it?
Yes. And that's a good question. But we're going to go back in regards to when we talk about feeding the body. Now, again, using the example as cereal doesn't necessarily mean that was the actual thing that I would be eating. But when we take it in consideration that, again, the factor that, yes, we classify the cereal has poison in it, there's chemicals in it. When we look at our food in general, especially in the last 50 years, all of our food has chemicals and poison in it. So when we really think about it, we can sit back and say, well, what should we eat? What should we not eat? But that falls again in all the judgment, shame, and guilt that we put on our bodies. And over time, it's really getting into that place of, how do I honor me? How do I honor my body? And really becoming more aware of how I feel when I eat what it is I'm eating. So again, taking consideration that, yes, science says cereal is bad. There's dyes in it, there's poison in it, and that's what science says. But now I'm going to take the initiative and ask my body, I'll use this term, muscle test, to see if that cereal is going to harm me or not. Now, if I get a complete no that it doesn't harm me, then I'm going to override science. And I'm going to honor my inner child by wanting to have that little treat. And when we think about it, if we go back 20, 30 years ago, I'm sure every one of us have had cereal at one time or another in our lives, in our lifetime. And we're still here to talk about it. So it means it didn't kill us. Facing factors that, again, the ingredients back then to now is very different because there is a lot of chemicals and dyes and etc. in the cereal. But getting to that place of really asking myself, and I ask the audience to do the same, when you are going to feed your inner child, the step process of does this serve me? Checking in, that muscle testing, as I said, checking in, does this serve me? Is this something I need right now? Is it a want? And if I do hypothetically get a no where this doesn't serve me, then I will sit and have a conversation with my inner child and say, how about we do something different rather than a cereal, because it's not really serving you right now.
Gotcha.
The
And
key,
would the inner child's desire be based on maybe a trauma, or just their personality when they were younger and demanded? How do you gauge where that desire comes from for that, let's say, cereal?
yes, I love that question. And how I gauge that is based on what is actually going on in the moment. What was actually what was going on prior to wanting to eat, the emotional connection to, let's say I was working with a client, it was a stressful session, so that stressfulness created the desire to need something that's going to make me feel better. So yes, of course, checking in, and checking in whether it's to fuel or feed, in regards to how do I feel right now regarding what I'm going to eat. And is it an emotional connection, or is it something that does go back further? And I truly
Mhm.
believe that's something we all should do, whether it doesn't matter if it's a matter of fueling or feeding. Always check into why am I about to eat? Am I eating because I'm hungry? Am I eating because I'm on a schedule? Because that's me. I'm on a schedule. I eat every so many hours in my day, like clockwork. Hungry or not hungry, I eat because it's just something that I do. I've trained myself to do it this way. Small portions, but doing it that way. But checking in to say, on an emotional level, where's my emotions? Are my emotions running really, really high, where I feel amazing and I'm going to make really good decisions on what it is I'm going to choose to eat? Or is my emotions on the low end, where I might be looking for, let's say, that cereal or that bag of chips or even a hamburger? For example, and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago with a client where she was feeling a little dizzy, disoriented, and wasn't able to like remember what she was looking to do. If she walked into another room, she was like, why did I come in here? And what happens with us, especially as we are evolving, when we're going through what I like to call ascensions, where our frequencies are rising, and we go through these every time we have a planetary shift. So with that being said, when we're going through an ascension, our bodies may crave those things that we've told ourselves we shouldn't have, such as, let's say, hamburger or a piece of steak. Theoretically, it's animal meat. So, I mean, there's plenty of people out there that, oh no, we don't eat animal meat. But if your body, especially in an ascension, is saying where you're experiencing dizziness or confusion or just not productive, not focused, that could be your body's way of saying we need something that's going to ground us with nutrients. And that's
Mm.
the meat. That's bringing us right down to earth. Now,
Yeah,
does that mean?
it's
Go ahead.
true. I believe in when you are craving something, that there is something telling you that you need it. But I'm going to just go back a shade too, because I also believe now I have instead of looking at something and saying, why do I want this? I also have something that I do it's how is it going to make me feel? Because I know that there's certain foods that I stay away from because they don't react on me well.
Yes.
And it's funny because a lot of people have hard times accepting when I go someplace and I can't eat chocolate, I can't eat cheese, I can't eat these foods because they don't react well in my body. And people have a hard time understanding it. And it's like, why would you eat something, even if you have a desire for something, if it's not going to make you feel good? That's my way of my body talking to me.
Yes.
And so it's never mind just yes, I start out when I go shopping. It starts out, what am I buying that I'm putting in my fridge that's going to be good for me? It doesn't just come to the point. And I think that's where it's really, people need to start looking instead of what am I going to eat? If it's, here's the thing, living on my own, if I don't buy it, I'm not going to eat it. If it's not in my house, I'm not going to be to have it. So why would you, start buying these things, spending, especially with the prices of food these days, if it's not going to something that's not going to help your body in a good way.
Yes, and you mentioned something that's really important too, and I think it's a perfect time to bring it up. You mentioned about how do you feel when you eat. Now, I believe, and I've witnessed this from many people are disconnected with their feelings. They're not even aware of how they feel once they've eaten something. They're not aware that, or should I say it like this? If we think about Thanksgiving, most people during Thanksgiving, because of whatever it is they're eating, they get very tired after they've eaten due to either overeating or whatever the myths that go along with Thanksgiving. But the real question here is the awareness of how do I feel? How do I feel before I eat? Meaning, how does my body feel? Does my body feel energized? Does my body feel bloated? Does my body feel tired? How does my body feel? And then once you finish eating, give and take 30 minutes later, and sometimes not even 30 minutes, sometimes it's even sooner, how does your body feel afterwards? And if there is a specific food that one is eating and they become more aware of how that food, how they feel after eating the food, then they can do what's called an elimination. And the elimination means taking that food out of your dietary plan for a period of 28 days and keeping a journal in regards to how you now feel without consuming that particular food. And then after 28 days, you're going to bring it back. You're going to reintroduce it. And then see if you feel the same way you felt for the last 28 days. Now, if you find that you're feeling great after not having that particular food for 28 days, then you know at that point in time, that food doesn't really serve your body. So theoretically, the thing would be to not introduce it again. Let it go. After the 28th day, 29th day, you go back and you eat it. And it really will only take one day after not having it for 28 days to go back and let it go. Now, I myself, for many years, didn't eat meat. I literally went on a meatless diet for I'd say about a good 15 years. And when I started doing my spiritual work and really tapping into my chakras and learning more about the planets and connecting with the planets, what started happening for me is I used to get, I'm going to use the word cravings. Like all of a sudden would be like, I would want meat. And I'm like, why am I looking to have meat? I haven't had meat in 15 years. So I would go to the best place that I knew made the best burger, healthy burger, and I would indulge in the burger. And it was like, why on earth am I looking to have a piece of a hamburger after not having meat for 15 years? And that's where my conclusion came. And it wasn't something I would do all the time. The conclusion was my body was craving it. I needed the meat for the ascension that I was experiencing. I didn't need to have it every day. I just needed a small amount for a short period of time. And now what I do in my regimen is I have a hamburger once a week, if not once a month, just for the ascension. And listening to and honoring the fact that, oh, well, now all of a sudden I want this. Like, what is this about? But really having that connection to why my body is craving it. What is it? What is the purpose behind it? Is it really a craving, or is it a factor that there's something like Nicole said earlier, or is there some sort of emotional situation going on? Is there a trauma taking place? Is there stress in my life? Why am I looking for this particular food to consume? And I go through the whole thing, the whole process of evaluating, analyzing it, journaling it, and evaluating how my body actually feels after having it. And I suggest my clients do the same in their journey. Now, when I speak of the spiritual contract that we do have regarding our body weight, it's the same process. It's recognizing that we all carry weight. Now, I don't know, and maybe the two of you will be able to have this answer for me, but I have no idea who or when someone decided that there was a specific weight that was the better weight to be in for a person, based on their height, based on their weight. And I know theoretically, yes, there is research, there's science behind it, but we became a society that just focuses so much on I have to be this particular weight. And what I
Yeah.
do with my clients is I ask them not to focus on the weight. Come
I
away
don't,
from
yeah, I don't believe the scale tells them all.
no.
Um, I know for myself, because I've been all sorts of weights. I've been at the high end and I've been at the low end, and I know what weight my body actually functions the best in. I know what I'm comfortable in, where I move well in, and I feel the healthiest in. And that's because I'm aware of my body. I'm aware, even like you're saying, I don't go through the amount of intensement that you do of picking a food. Like I say, I start my journey before when I go to buy food. I'm being aware of what I'm buying, but I also know what foods um, nourish me, make me feel good. At time to time, yeah, I will have things that aren't the greatest things for me, but they're more of a thing of a once in a while type of thing. But it's mostly about, for me, it's how I feel. It's really important that when we tune in, we actually have to tune into what is going on with you, and mentally, and it's true because we eat differently when we're stressed as opposed to when we are really flying high. It's no doubt about it that it affects us in different ways.
That is very true.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But I do have a question for you, and I'm going to give away my age on this one. But if you go back, like when I was growing up in the 70s, there were really, we were all in shape. We didn't even try. We ate, we had sit down dinners, Taco Bell was just coming into being. But for the most part, we ate very, very healthy. People still had gardens, people had all this. So we had a very well-maintained society in terms of health and weight. And then as time goes along, we start getting the processed food and being told, you can't have salt, you can't have this, but you got to have this, but you got to take away butter and you got to eat margarine. There became all these conditions that went along with eating. So we now have a society that, for the most part, is unhealthy and overweight. So when that contract comes into play, how did it decide? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, your contract that you were healthy and now you're heavy, where does that, or does the contract get renewed on a spiritual level that you're going to experience this because things are different now? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Yes, and I love that question. And when we think about like any contract, we have the opportunity to revise the spiritual contract. Excuse me. I've been trying to mute myself when I cough. So anyway,
It's okay.
we have the opportunity to revise the spiritual contract. And what I mean by revising it, when someone is on the journey of wanting to, whether it's in the 3D words, lose weight, I refer to as release weight.
Mm-hmm.
When
I
they
like
make
that.
that decision to want to go down that journey, for whatever their reasons are, from my point of view, from the work that I do, is they need to get to that understanding to what was the reason why they called the weight in, what trauma, what what grief took place at the time when the weight was called in. When we think about body weight in itself, metaphysically, It's just a psychological wall that we built to protect us from someone or something. Now we have to understand that we build that wall to protect us from someone or something. And when we make that decision to want to lose weight, release weight, are we doing it because society thinks that you are overweight? And because society thinks you're overweight, now in your mind it's like, well, I want to fit in. I want to be in the box that I fit in like everybody else. So I'm going to go and restrict calories, or I'm going to get onto an exercise program, or whatever it is one decides to do. Now, that is a short-term goal, and it's a short-term way of reaching whatever weight they're looking to get to. My process is, in reference to revise their spiritual contract, is to really get to that place of, why did I call the weight in? What was it protecting me from? And am I ready to work on forgiving? And I know that this is big for Nicole, because this is something she does as well. Am I ready to forgive? Forgive myself for whatever it is that I thought I did or didn't do, or I wasn't good enough. And then forgive the other party that was involved, that I felt the need to protect myself from. That's the first part of it, is having to ask, am I ready to forgive? Once that person says they're ready to do the forgiving for themselves and the other person, then they can start working on clearing that energy of forgiving. Once they do that, then they go that process of, what did they learn in the journey of the weight that they had? What did they learn about themselves? How long was that journey for?
That's a great point.
Yeah, it really is. I love that.
And once they can get to that understanding of what they have learned, because again, every contract is a lesson. And if you have not learned something from that lesson, you're not going to be able to let it go. You have to learn the lesson.
And that's why so many people hold on to their weight, because they haven't sat back and learned how they felt, what it made them feel like, everything that went on during that time. I love that.
Exactly. So it's learning the lesson. Yeah. They can sit whatever. It doesn't have to be a whole list of things that they've learned. One thing that they learned from carrying that weight, and from the experience that they had to do the forgiving on. Once they've done that, then at that point in time is when they can turn around and start clearing the energy of that contract, and then start rewriting the contract according to the way they want their new desire, what their new body is going to show up as. So if they want to show up as being stronger, physically, emotionally, mentally, and psychologically stronger, they'd have to be able to write out what that actually looks like. And then the process of, how do they move? How are they going to move in their body now compared to what they moved like before? And they have to write that out. Everything that they have to go through, once they write it all out, then it's the process of now acting it out, where we can sit and visualize the moving into that new body, visualizing it. Now we're going to take inspired action each and every day to get to that energy of what you see, so you can embody the new spiritual contract. And once they've done that work, that's when they've cut the old contract of that body weight. And then they can take on the new body, not body weight, because it's not about the weight, as we already said. The weight is just all the emotional baggage that we hold on to from the contract before. It's the same concept on when we're shifting from the 3D mindset to the 4D. We have to let go of the habits, the beliefs, the programming, and the philosophy that goes with the 3D, and shift into that 4D. And now we have a whole new list of habits, beliefs, programmings, and philosophies. It's the same concept when it comes to that spiritual contract with your body weight.
Yeah.
In regards to, this is how I used to do things in the body before. This is my new to do things in the body now. And that is the big part that I see that many health professionals, personal trainers are not doing. They're guiding, they're coaching their clients to lose the weight, to get on these regimens, to restrict, to limit, to overdo, count calories, to get that client to get to that weight goal that they're looking to get to. But it doesn't help them stay there because they never clear the contract from the previous contract.
It's okay. It's not okay. I totally agree with you 1,000,000%, because if you don't sit down and two things. First of all, when you're talking about envisioning the body of what it is after, this whole idea of envisioning works with everything. This is how we start with changing ourselves, of moving forward. So many people are just unhappy in their lives, but it's about sitting back to yourself and start figuring out, again, the awareness. What is it that I'm unhappy about? What is it that's holding me back? Is it my body? Is it that I don't feel comfortable in myself and how I look, and whatever the things are? Maybe it's the way I'm showing up to people. All of these things are what we need to explore, because, to enable to move forward, just what you're saying, you've got to get rid of the junk. We got to
Yeah.
get rid of that stuff, the anchor that's held us in from where we were. But if we
Exactly, Glenda. And when you think about it, and I've never been like very heavy, but I've eaten unhealthy. I have put on a few pounds. But the people that I know that struggle with weight, whether it be a doctor, a dietitian, a coach, a trainer, no one that I can think of ever addresses the why. And I
Yes.
think that's a huge, crucial point that everyone should be aware of. I think that's absolute brilliance to address the why, and it's inside you. You can find it.
yeah.
But Joanne, how would some people understand this, some people have never heard of this. So where would you have someone start that journey of finding your why to your weight contract?
Well, I'd sit down with clients who are just starting their journey regarding their evolution of shifting vibrations, from 3D to 4D, etc. And I asked them, when did you start noticing the weight come on? When? How old were you? Once they can give me the age of how old they were, then I can say to them at that point, what was going on in your life at that time when you started noticing the weight? That's the difficult part, because that's where we go and discover. That's where we go and dig
Yeah.
in reference to maybe there's a trauma. And this is the part that most people don't want to talk about. And for that matter, as especially personal trainers, I mean, my training that I do is outside the box of personal training. I've done the work that I do separately from a personal trainer. I have the ability to sit and have the conversation with a client, to ask the deep questions that an average personal trainer won't and can't. They shouldn't. It's not their scope of practice. I don't qualify myself to be a therapist, but I definitely am qualifiable as a Reiki master to be able to sit with a client and ask them what was going on at that time. Let's have a conversation. And then I hold space for them to
Yes.
feel comfortable enough, to be able to be vulnerable enough to share with me what took place. And interesting enough, and I've witnessed this with so many clients, the minute they literally say what took place, the minute, and I kid you not when I say this, the minute it comes out of their mouth, where they actually hear it for the first time ever, they literally release weight. Literally, it's
Yeah.
like the pounds just drop off them, because they no longer carry this, I'm going to use the word burden of this experience that they've never talked about. Or they
Yes.
might have talked about it, but they never talked about it in the extent that I hold space for them to talk about. I hold space for them to get into it. And it's not about having them to relive the experience, because I do not want them to relive the experience.
No.
I just really want them to recognize that the age that they were, and how that age that contract of the experience led to the weight. And then giving them permission and asking them, now that you understand when you called in the weight, the why behind it, are you really ready to work on releasing the emotional connection? Are you really ready to go into the forgiveness and to really let it go? So we cut the cords of it. And I've had clients say, yes, I am, and they go through the process, but they get midway through when it gets a little challenging and they get scared. They get overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God. And they do retreat back in reference to that they're not ready to completely release the weight. And it's okay.
Hence
And
the
that's the
yoga
program that's the program they've been living on for so long. They really don't know who they are or who they will become.
Exactly.
So I get it. It can be a challenge.
Exactly. So allowing them to be in that space of like recognizing that, what does it feel like, as Glenda said earlier, what does it feel like when you release the first 10 pounds? How does that feel to release 10 pounds? Yes, grant you look on the scale, you see 10 pounds is off the scale if you're getting on a scale, or you're looking at your clothes and you're feeling like your clothes is fitting extremely differently. Now it's also a matter that you're 10 pounds lighter. Now people look at you differently. Now you're going to get people to pay attention to you. This is something you've never had before. Now people pay attention to you. Do you want to be seen? That's the next thing.
Once now we start building on the confidence.
Exactly.
The people, they don't feel good. So, it all comes together when you don't feel good, you don't show up for yourself, you don't stand up tall, you don't, all the things that I believe everything is connected to everything else. It's a full circle.
Yes.
So when you holding all that anger or worry or whatever it is, that is part of what you're talking about, that people have to be able to get off of them. It's like having something stuck in your throat. Unless you can get it out, you're going to keep on the yo-yo. And I get it. I lived in a home of people who yo-yoed all their life. So it's part of, and I've seen it, of people I've been connected with and helped, as well as even for my own self probably 40 years ago, I lost my weight and I never gained it back. It was about learning to connect in with yourself. And that's what we talk about, of self.
Exactly. And that's the key component, that when someone actually recognizes their spiritual contract, they know what their spiritual contract is, they know what that connection is with the weight that they carry, and they make that decision to say, okay, it's time for me to cut the cord to this contract and start stepping into this new body, stepping into being this new version of me. And they now start calling in a different version of who they are. They now reinstate a new contract. So it goes back to, it's not even about, well, I had to change my dietary habits to release the weight. It really isn't. It's really about, I had to change my mindset. I had to change. What's that?
Bingo.
Yeah.
I had to change my mindset and my connection to how I feel in my body, because we have to love our body first before we can actually shift anything. Totally. If there's no love to your body, if you're not loving on the body you're actually in right now, how are you going to know if you're going to love the new body? You got to love the body you're in right now in order to know if you're going to love the next body. It's when we think about it, it's like relationships. It's like, well, that relationship didn't work out so well, so I'm going to walk away from that relationship and I'm going to meet somebody else. Well, honey, guess what? You're going to probably meet someone who's very similar to the last person you were with, because you didn't learn what you needed to learn from the previous relationship. So it's got to show up in the next one.
Exactly.
And there's another bingo.
Bingo was right. She sees me. It's coming in.
And that's what I learned during mine, because I kind of went right into something, and it made me realize, oh my God, I am history repeating itself with every single person I've ever been with.
Yes.
You know, and so it was like a shock to me that, dang, that's your fault. You know.
Exactly. It's like Glenda said before about the yo-yo dieting. When we think about all the different fads out there, from let's say CrossFit to Zumba to whatever the plans are, and that one person who's trying to reach their weight goal, well, the last plan didn't work, so they're going to go and try something else, and they're going to go and try something else, and it works for a short period of time because everything does work for a short period of time,
Right.
and that short period of time could be 6 weeks, where we get really excited because you see some results, but then eventually once you reach that plateau, it's like, well, why is it not working? Because you haven't changed anything. You haven't changed your beliefs. You haven't changed your habits. You haven't changed the programming to what it is you do.
And that goes with every single thing in your life. And that's why, you know, the word mindset drives me nuts because it's so used today. It's such a used word, but it doesn't have meaning of really what it does mean. Of being able to understand yourself. And this is what people, I think it's what we've come into a society where it's become a much shallower society, where we're so worried about what everybody else thinks. If people would stop and worry about what you're thinking, what's going on in your mind, how are you talking to yourself? If we start working on ourselves first and start seeing what we really need to see, what makes us happy, what makes us sad, what makes us feel good, what makes us not feel good, that's when we can start shifting things.
Exactly.
But when we're so worried about the other guy because we're worried about what everyone else is thinking and feeling, then you're not going to get anywhere with your own life.
Exactly. And here's an interesting storyline. When we think about the body weight and we think about the spiritual contracts, there are people in this lifetime that literally have a spiritual contract to carry weight because a past life they were in, let's say, the best body they could be in. And there were some disadvantages to doing that, to being in that body. So in this lifetime, they made an agreement to want to be in a larger size body. And that's just what it is. But because society has it where if you're in a large size body, you do not fit in the box. And in theory, and this is something I go by all the time, we are not meant to fit in the box. We are all unique. We're all very authentic. And we need to start allowing ourselves to fit outside the box and recognizing that whether you're in a large body or not, how do you feel in your large body?
Exactly.
Do you feel confident? Do you show up? I mean, I've seen women, large women, that, oh my God, if I had half of their confidence, whew,
Yep.
I'd be a kick-ass woman.
Yep.
And they're in a large body. And that's, should they have to turn around and release that weight because society doesn't think they should be in a large body? No, it's their contract.
It's true. And I've seen that, you know, my first mentor I ever had when I had my first job, I was in a women's retail fashion. And the woman that was hiring me, she was a very large woman. But here's the thing, she carried herself with such grace and such beauty. I actually changed the way I looked at things because of how she came up. How do you, and that's part of the things that I believe in. And what I try to teach people is, how do you show up? How do you stand? How do you show up for yourself? Because when you see somebody standing or walking, that shows huge amounts of what they feel about themselves and how they feel in their own bodies.
True. And, you know, look at you know, for example, Oprah.
Yes.
You know, she's a larger lady. Now, she did at one point do that liquid diet, lost all that weight. Did it work? Absolutely not. But there's confidence, there's grace, there's courage, you know, you name it, that lady has it. So it works for her beautifully.
Exactly. And she's a perfect example for all of us. In reference to, yes, we've all followed Oprah. Every one of us know her story.
Yeah.
And I remember her trainer, I think it was Bob Green, if I'm not mistaken, was her trainer. And him saying to her, after working with her for many years, Oprah, until you are ready to understand your why to your weight, will be the day when you will actually be able to release your weight without fad dieting. But you
And
have
that's
to
what she's doing
understand
now.
your why.
Yeah. And that's exactly what's happening in her now. She has changed.
Yeah.
She has learned. And now, if you've seen her recently, she has shed her weight and she's been
Yes.
keeping it off.
Yeah. And because she also went through that whole process of forgiving the story that called in the way to start with, forgiving all the different scenarios that went on from that experience. And that's the big part, is that when we can get to that place of forgiving and rewriting the spiritual contract to the body weight, is when we start to see. So it's not really about, as I said this earlier, it's not about going on a diet. It's not about movement. And I'm an advocate of strength training. And there's a whole different story behind why I'm an advocate of strength training, which I will share at a different time, but it has absolutely nothing to do with dieting and movement. It really is about that mindset, your beliefs, and getting to your why, going into a space of forgiving, and getting to that place of like, I'm going to let go of this story and I'm going to embody my new contract. And what does that new contract look like?
Yeah. And I think the why plays into every aspect of your life in terms of how you act, how you react, how you respond, why you do what story are you telling yourself each and every day when you get up, and what is the why behind it? So I think, not just weight, but I think the why plays into every aspect of us as humans.
Exactly. And if we can get this point across out there today to all the women and the men, that it really isn't about, having to train intensely, having to watch everything you put in your mouth, but making that decision on what the spiritual contract is. When did I call in the weight? What is it about? And am I ready to forgive the storyline and move into?
And also the awareness of like, what is the story that you're repeating to yourself at all times? Because never mind just the storyline that is there, but you need to start being really honest with yourself, and which a lot of people aren't, is stepping back and start to be aware that you have a story that you keep on repeating. This goes on and on and on. Like, if something happened to you, how many people are still talking about a marriage that they might have left 10 years ago, and it's still going and playing on in their head, and what that person did to them? Well,
exactly.
That's holding you back.
Exactly. And even if we go, because we've chatted about the larger women, even talking about the women who are thin, who are thin structured, what their journey is, and their spiritual contract to the weight that they hold on to, even though they're thin. There could be a whole belief system in their mind in regards to, like, I have to be this certain weight again to fit into society. Whereas in reality, that itself could be a whole process of sabotaging and judging themselves as well, thinking that they have to be a certain weight to be thin. They have to do these certain things to be thin. They too need to check out their spiritual contract to find out, why is my process this?
Well, we got to also recognize the fact that being thin is not necessarily of being healthy.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
People look at just, they're blunt on, you're fat and you're skinny, and you know what, and you must be perfect because you're skinny. But you know what, maybe you drink all the time and smoke, and maybe that's why, because you're not an eater. And you know what, the person like that can drop dead at a second's notice as well. So we have to start looking at it as things aren't just what you see.
Exactly. And it comes right back to that mindset. Is what one is saying to themselves throughout the day, that either is going to be about having to release weight or having to be this certain weight or whatever it is. What is the mindset? What is it about yourself? And how do I like the body that I am in right now?
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this has probably been one of the fastest shows that
Ever,
that
ever. I was
right?
just thinking that. I swear, I'm like, that, it just was.
You know what, Joanne, we could go on, and yes, we'll come back and we'll discuss this even further because it's a very interesting philosophy, and it's something that we really have to really dive deep into. And like I say, I think my big word that I keep putting out is awareness.
Yes.
To me, it's a huge one. But just before we end, how can people reach out and get you?
Best place is my email, healingwithin76@gmail.com. And if they do want to follow me based on all my different conversations, they can just check out my YouTube channel, which is Holistic with a W, Fitness Barry Colon.
Love it. Okay. And we'll definitely afterwards put this down in the chat so people will be able to see this and reach out to you because you know what? You have a lot of knowledge out there. And I say you can't put an hour is not enough time to go through all of this. Lovely.
Yes, never is.
This kind of thing, these are lifetimes of learning.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And also too, it's actually a good thing that we only have an hour because in reality, we can only really take in bite-sized information.
Right.
So
Right.
too
Absolutely.
much too soon will be overwhelming for some.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nicole, any last minute little tidbits that I'm sure you have to say?
I have absolutely loved this conversation on many levels. The importance of self-care, the importance of, weight, not thin does not necessarily mean healthy. There's so many aspects that we could really dive into at another time. But I think, like I talked about, I think the most important thing is understanding your why, not society's why, not, your best friend's why, not your husband or your ex for that matter, but just your why. You're important, you count, and what's going on inside of you is yours to own. And
Yes.
so for me, it's like understanding who you are, what you desire, and who you want to become. So that's it.
I love it. Thank you both so very much. This has been a very enlightening conversation today. And you know what? It all is about you. I've been saying that forever, and people have to start realizing you really are special. Everybody has their own talents, their own magnificence, but it all starts with self-care and loving yourself first enough that you can sparkle and shine. And that is what today was all about. Take care of yourself first, and then you can help to take care of others. But it all starts with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until we meet again, enjoy it. Remember, just love yourself just that little bit more.